queens, sisters manifesting their dreams. Get your cream by any means and beam with self-esteem. Beauty supreme and booty walk so mean. The way you fit in them jeans, you eat your cornbread and greens. Dance or a doctor, red wine or vodka. Redesign your spot and redefine your mantra. Retwist your locks and realign your chakras. Doing your squats and getting closer to God, huh? Brunching with your squad or taking a girl's trip. Adjust your crown, you God's gift to the world, sis. Celestial body, drink your water. Meditate, sun-kissed goddess, heavenly order. Levitate, tribe of Ashanti. Black girl magic, melanin popping. Whether you ratchet or lavish, whether you bougie or savage, you a gift and a treasure. You got to love a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, dog. When God made you, boo, you know he showed out. Mahogany enchantress, blessings overflow now. Picture of success, seductive silhouettes on a spiritual quest. Manifest and be blessed. Mother, sister, auntie, tribe of Ashanti. Rocking your locks, I got a close crop blondie. The curse and the gift, uplift, apply pressure. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Nothing like a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. This is a podcast about mental health and wellness, as well as self-empowerment for Black women. I'm your host, Ursula. I'm a transformation life coach and a mental health and wellness advocate. And each week, I promise to deliver relevant topics and resources that affect our community so that we can ignite that fire from within. Welcome to season 3. This has been an exciting day. I have an excellent guest coming up, but let's take care of some housekeeping. Before we get into it, I definitely want you to visit my website, Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together, so you can see all the coaching packages, the digital merchandise, as well as merch. And also keep in mind that we're closing out August, which is National Wellness Month, which is why I have my special guest on today, because we're going out with the bang. But we're going to get right into it. Oh, also, whenever you listen to me on the audio podcast, please give a sister some love. Show a sister some love and give me a review. I would greatly appreciate it. Now we can get into it. So, as I said, today is almost rounded out the month of August, which is National Wellness Month. And Black mental matters is also pretty good topic so that we can end this month out. So I'm going to add my guest on. His name is Aaren Snyder.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Oh, you're already getting some love from, I'll post it. Here we go. Greetings to the host and the panel. Hello, blind guy, his wife, and their life. All right, Aaren, thank you for coming on today. I am so excited to have you on. How was your day today?
My day was cool. I just went to work, did the typical therapy thing, I mean, it's never really typical, but, it was my routine. I got that done for the day, and then I made some plans to arrange to be here.
So greatly appreciative of that. So can you tell everyone, welcome to you, Aaren. Now you're getting some specific love. Can you see that?
So, yeah, thank you.
All right. So Can you tell everybody what kind of therapist you are and what made you want to become a therapist?
Yes, I am a marriage and family therapist, and I work at a nonprofit right now as a specifically a family therapist where I work with at youth children and their families. I go to their houses. So what that is called is a home based therapist. So in the position that I'm in now, most of my cases are court ordered, and I work with youth in the inner cities of Toledo, Ohio at the moment. What got me into therapy really was not any like big reasons. It was just more so that when I graduated from undergrad, I couldn't find a good job in psychology because psychology was the major that I got my bachelor's in. Couldn't really find a good job, so somebody told me that in order to get a better job, you got to go back to school and get your master's. So it's not a lot of masters in mental health. So naturally, the therapy was the one that I gravitated towards because I just realized that I had sort of a aptitude at talking to people, right? So that was just the thing that reeled me in. And then, from there, it was all she wrote.
Wow. That seems to be a recurring theme of the therapists that I've had on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they seem to hone it. And now they have their niche, and all are thriving in it. That's so impressive.
Yeah.
So everyone, when you watch this, and also this is going to be turned into an audio podcast, Aaren has a book. I purchased it. It's called Black Mental Health Matters. And it's the ultimate guide for mental health awareness in the Black community. And that's what you got to love on that right there. Yeah, exactly. And the way he writes the book, it is so relatable. And once I read a few pages of it, well, let me be real. I followed him on Instagram a lot. And then when I saw that he had a book, I instantly purchased it and I read it at the pool. And it's a really easy read and it's so relatable. A Black author for the Black community. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
So what made you want to write the book?
Well, what made me want to write the book is because prior to the job that I'm working at now, I worked at a correctional facility, a jail. And my job was to screen people for mental illness when they come into the jail. So screen the inmates. And I would notice that a lot of the inmates were having mental health issues that they didn't really recognize as such.
Like what?
Like I would hear people describe all the symptomology of depression or all the symptoms of anxiety or the PTSDs or even schizophrenia, and they had no clue that these were diagnosable mental illnesses. So to me, that showed a problem. It highlighted that there was a problem within the community of people not really being aware of mental illnesses in the way that they should, especially these people who are cycling in and out of jail with issues that are surrounding those mental illnesses. So that gave me the idea to say, hey, I need to write a book that will, give people the knowledge and the tools that they need to get in order to not continue to be in and out of jail based on these uncomfortable feelings and maladaptive behaviors that keep landing them in and out of incarceration.
Yeah. So when you would talk to some of the inmates, did you find that some of them were opening up to you, or was there always a wall? Because if they see a brother that looks like them, I figured there would have been some kind of connection.
Yeah, they were, and that was one of the main things, because this was prior to me really becoming a therapist per se. Like at the time I was a counselor. So, and there's a different distinction between being a counselor at a jail and actually being a marriage and family therapist. But either way, the people were very open to me and they were telling me a lot about their lives and stuff. And they did not really realize that they had mental illnesses. So I was thinking like maybe this is the first time they've ever talked about any of these things, because how could they go so far in life without really hearing that they had these illnesses if they told somebody else this before, because
Right.
any professional will recognize that this is a mental illness if they were told this. So I doubt that they ever really opened up in that way to anybody. And me being Black and being relatable and so
Right.
on and so forth, I think that that gives a lot of people the confidence that they need to speak on their issues.
Wow. So you were always diagnosing them. Were some of the inmates open to what you were saying as
Well,
far as their diagnosis or your observations?
yes and no. Some of them were, some of them were like, wow, I didn't know I had ADHD, or I didn't know I had depression or whatever. But a lot of them were not, like, oh, no, I ain't got no
Mm,
anxiety issue. I don't have PTSD, because it's such a foreign concept to a lot of people, especially within the Black community, because most people have never had any type of mental health treatment outside of something that may be punitive or corrective. You know what I mean? Like in, granted, we were in a jail, but still not a lot of people have any mental health experience outside of it being something negative.
oh, well, yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on? Because I read in your book about the social and the self stigmas of mental health in our community.
Mhm. Well, the social stigmas of mental illness is pretty much that I was just talking about. Is the ideal that having some sort of mental problem or mental issue is something that is to be shamed, or is something that is to be embarrassed about, because people don't really understand it. And if
Right.
you don't have a lot of understanding about something, it's easy to deem it as something negative. It's easy to not have a certain level of compassion. So that social stigma is huge in our community, because most people, when they think of mental illness, they think of it as something negative, because that's the only time they've ever experienced mental illness, whether it's in jail, or you getting sent to the office and now you got to see a therapist at school, or, marriage, divorce court or something like that. Those are really the only times people have ever stood before a therapist. So it's almost that they lump it in the same category with seeing a judge, or seeing a probation officer or something like that. So I just wanted to really be a part of the charge to change the narrative.
Yes, we need more like you, and definitely platforms that you have. Like, I love your Instagram, and everyone, I put Aaron's links in the show description notes. So you just visit his Instagram. It's some fire on there, and it really makes me think a lot, and it's so relatable. So can you talk about the self stigma?
Well, the self stigma is birthed in the social stigma. Without the social stigma, there would be no self stigma. Most people internalize the feelings from the community about mental illness, and they attribute those feelings to themselves. So, if everybody telling you crazy because you got PTSD, it's not going to be hard to start to believe that, if that's all you've ever heard, or if everybody telling you that you should be ashamed to say you have some sort of mental illness, it's going to be real hard for you to get out there and say you got one and then try to get the help. So that's what the self stigma is, that a lot of times people just internalize these negative feelings that are perpetuated by
Mm.
society, people who really don't know anything about mental illness.
Mm. Did you ever find that any of the inmates wanted to continue to talk to you after the initial intake?
All the time. I was like the main person people wanted to talk to, because I was really the only Black counselor. I was the only one. And I realized that that was a need for the community when I kept getting all the feedback that I was getting, all the people that wanted to come and talk to me. Like, sometimes people would talk to me for, you know, an hour, and it really was just supposed to be a quick assessment. But, sometimes they would be giving me their whole life story, and I could tell that this would be new to them. This was
Wow.
an experience that they never had before, and it's very rewarding to know that you're helping somebody in the way that you are.
Yes. Well, I'm going to read an excerpt from the book, which
Mhm.
I loved. You said that you will also, from this book, that you will also dispel some of the negative beliefs that surround mental health. And throughout this book, I use terms African American, Black and Brown community, lower socioeconomic status community, and impoverished communities interchangeably. Can you explain that?
Well, I didn't want to be repetitive and just say the same term over and over. So what I said is I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, but in no way does one necessarily equal another. Just because you're in the Black community doesn't necessarily mean you're in an impoverished community.
Mhm.
Or just because you are Black and brown doesn't necessarily mean that you necessarily identify as African American. And that's just what I was trying to say, is that I was going to make a distinction, but however, I was going to use those terms interchangeably.
Right.
Mhm.
You also said this book's purpose is to educate those who are uneducated about mental health. And this was the key word, and to enhance the knowledge of those who wish to learn more about psychological issues that are significant aspects of their lives. Overall, Black Mental Health Matters aims to enhance mental health awareness and literacy in Black and Brown communities, as well as in other underprivileged societies.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
so dope.
Yeah. Because, what I was aiming for is, we have a lot of movements in the Black community right now. You got the social justice issues, you got the financial literacy, and mental health is no exception. So I wanted to increase people's overall understanding of mental health, just like, you got the financial experts out here teaching people about stocks and real estate and whatnot. I want to be able to get to a point where we in the Black community, everybody knows what uh, PTSD is. Everybody knows schizophrenia when they see it. Everybody knows how to intervene during a suicidal crisis, or so on and so forth. So I just wanted to increase our literacy, our baseline understanding of mental illnesses.
Ooh, the baseline. You know, yeah, because you know what? I love that because I believe when you do have that baseline that
Mhm.
you can respond like we just talked earlier before we went online, you
Yeah,
can learn to respond and not react and have a lot more grace with people because
exactly.
like that individual I told you about, I already see before I called him back, he had it all over his face, and I just happened to be the next person, and he went in on, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like you knew there was something else going on. I'm not saying mental
Mhm.
issues, but even just the mood itself.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot. So do you mind if I go through a couple of the sections or the
Yeah.
chapters?
Yeah. Go
And
ahead. Yeah.
okay, let's get into it. Now, everyone who's listening, and oh yeah, if you listen on a replay, make sure and type replay. He's only going to give snippets. You're going to have to go to the website and purchase the book. So he's not giving you all, but just enough to with that palette.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, here we go. So your section one, and we already went over this, but what is mental health and why does it matter? And the myths about mental illness and mental health treatment.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the myths about mental health treatment often are what keeps people further away from getting the help that they need when it comes to mental health.
Right.
A lot of times it's our lack of understanding that pushes people further away from help than lack of access to said help. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times it's the I don't want to say culture, but it's the understanding we as a people or a cultural group have about mental illness that pushes people away from going and seeking the help that they need, or even knowing about the help in the first place.
Yeah, that's so true. What are your thoughts about people wanting to pray it away and rather go to a church leader as opposed to a trained professional.
I think that goes back to culture as well. And it's not just exclusive to Black culture. A lot of cultures think in that way. However, I think that ideal is birthed in another idea that mental illness is not something that's serious. People believe that is a character flaw of sorts, rather than something that's physiologically imbalanced and within somebody. They think that it's something that's intrinsic to the person rather than something that is, biological or environmental.
So if someone was to ask you about that, how would you break what you just said? How would you break that down into layman's terms so it can be relatable to them?
Okay. Well, what I would say is a lot of times people have mental illnesses, and those mental illnesses say nothing about who you are as a person. Those mental illnesses are similar to physical illnesses in the sense of sometimes just your genetic makeup contributes to mental illnesses just as much as your environment may contribute to those things. So just because you have anxiety doesn't make you a bad person, no more than having asthma would make you a bad person. And just because you may have diabetes doesn't always mean that it's a lifestyle choice that gave you that illness, no more than a lifestyle choice would give you depression. These things are things that are deeply rooted in our genetic makeup a lot of the time, but people don't really realize that because we don't have that baseline understanding of mental illness.
It seems like we have a baseline of covering it up and ignoring, at least from my experience. I can't speak on everyone, but that's how I feel on that.
I agree, because you taught that it's something to be ashamed about, So I mean, of course, if everybody telling you should be ashamed about it, of course you're gonna cover it up.
Absolutely. And also, you're right, because if you have diabetes or asthma, you wouldn't be embarrassed to tell anybody about that. I go to the gym a lot. We see people pulling out inhalers all the time.
Exactly. It's normalized. But when it comes to that mental illness, it's just been a culture of stigmas that just has contributed to people being ashamed of it, and it's really the same, it's no different than having a physical illness, but for some reason, over time, people have taught that it's something wrong with it.
What about our other counterparts? Do you feel like they have as much of a stigma as the Black community has it?
I don't feel like they have as much of a stigma, but it's a stigma amongst other races too. But I think that other races have been a little further ahead of us in terms of acknowledging and accepting mental illness. And we're just now getting as a culture to that point.
Right. I would agree with that. Especially looking at all my social media. I follow a lot of therapists and coaches, and the momentum I feel is gaining. And I'm actually, for the first time, feeling encouraged about it. And it feels good.
It does.
We're such a strong people. Like, this is just an extra added power, extra bar to our power pack, right?
That's facts.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Before we go on, so what are your thoughts on generational trauma in our community?
I think that generational trauma is such a deeply rooted issue. The generational trauma is really deep in our roots as Black people, and a lot of it flies beneath our level of consciousness. Like, we've, as a group of people, experienced so much trauma physically and mentally that, it's encoded in our DNA, from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration, crack epidemics, all the oppression and the inequalities in our community, not to mention the mental damage that these things have done to us. So I think generationally, we got to do a lot of unpacking when it comes to these mental health issues. And it starts with having culturally competent clinicians in place, like myself, like other therapists. And you don't necessarily have to be a Black therapist. You just got to understand what's going on. And that's kind of hard to find. And that's the battle that we are in right now. That's the fight that we're trying to win right now, is to get more people who understand what's going on with boots on the ground so that we can start healing some of these people, because it's a lot of work to be done.
It really is. But, I tend to agree. These are my thoughts. I have to be careful with my words. Okay, let me keep it real.
Okay.
My therapist looks like me.
Okay.
And I've had one that doesn't look like me. And it is different.
Yeah.
It is no different than, as you see, I have locks. Bless you. I have locks, and I'm not gonna get the same hairstyle. But that's just my experience. But it's just the relatability.
Well, let me tell you why I said that they don't necessarily have to be Black. Right. Because of course you are going to probably have a lot in common with a Black therapist. That's a given, right?
Yeah.
But does it necessarily mean that because somebody is Black, they understand what's going on in the community? It's a lot of skin folk that ain't kin folk, right?
Ooh, say that again. I like that. A lot of
skin folk that ain't kin folk. But, at the same time, it's some down white brothers and sisters too. Yeah. But generally speaking, somebody that comes from the same race as you does have a lot of cultural understanding, a lot of cultural competency. So, yes, having a therapist that look like you is definitely something that is a plus, is an asset, because they don't have to learn. They don't have to go through no textbook. They don't have to do none of that in most cases. They just be already understanding what's going on. If you say you tight about something, they know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Let me tell you this funny story. So I go to a group therapy that there's 2 therapists in the group that they perform. And whatever the topic is, I'm not going to say, but whatever it was, and the reaction from all the sisters was, girl. And it's so funny. There was nothing but eye contact and the girl. And we had a whole conversation through our girl and through our eye contact. It was so funny. And I remember thinking, we can do that with each other because we get it. We get it. Yeah. But, I've experienced secondary gaslighting. And I didn't know that that's what it was. And I was like, let's start over. But I'm glad I did. I kept going until I found the right fit, just like a good pair of shoes that fit excellent.
Yeah.
I'd love to post this. If you can give me your commentary from Blind Guy, his wife, and their life. Lakita says the way we can inherit and pass on things in our DNA makes sense that we may pass on mental things too.
That's facts. That's it right there. That's exactly what it is. Our mental illnesses in a lot of cases are passed down generationally, and us being Black people having to deal with all the different atrocities that we've dealt with generationally. Just imagine what's being passed down. Somewhere down the line, you got a great-great-grandfather who might have been a slave that experienced PTSD. That PTSD doesn't just go away when he has kids. That genetic is passed down to the next generation.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So all the trials and tribulations of Black people don't just go away. That becomes encoded in our DNA. And if we never really had any healing done, it doesn't.
That part. That part. And I was just gonna say that we've never healed from it. We may think we have, but we haven't. What is it? Epigenetics is real.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, another section, issues that increase the risk of developing a mental health disorder. And you have different examples, such as which we talked about: race, substance abuse, suicide, marital and family problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, those issues are what we call risk factors. And, anybody can have risk factors. Anybody can have uh, issues that contribute to their mental illnesses. But as Black people, we tend to come from marginalized communities that have a heightened risk of those things occurring. Poverty is rampant in the inner cities of America, which so happen to be occupied by Black people. Substance abuse and poverty go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Substance abuse and violence go hand in hand, and all those things are risk factors, and all those things are things that are extraordinarily common in our community. So naturally, we as Black people have a heightened risk of mental illness, but a lot of people don't know it, and we don't have a heightened level of awareness. So those two things going together is a very dangerous combination.
This I found extremely interesting. You also put social media in that.
Yes.
Can you do a not too much of a deep dive, because we want people to get the book, but
Right.
dig into that. That made my eyebrows raise.
Well, social media right now, social media wasn't always what it is today. But social media causes a lot of people to question themselves and think of themselves as inadequate. Like,
in what kind of way?
Like if you see a sister on there with a big old booty and chest just poking out, and she got 1,000 likes on every picture, you don't got those same things, you start to look at yourself different. You start to be like, oh man, I must not look good or whatever, right?
Right.
And a lot of times what people don't realize is that is a false reality that we're looking at. We're only looking at what they're allowing us to see. When they showing a new car and they trip to the Bahamas, and we don't really realize that isn't what their life is in its totality, and it may not even be what their life is at all. They may just be showing us what they want us to think. You know what I mean? And as people, we have to be aware of that and not internalize what we're seeing and comparing it with our real life. And a lot of times people do that. They compare a highlight reel of somebody else's life to their real life flaws and all, and then they wonder why they feel upset.
Right. That even like the Instagram relationships.
Mm-hmm. Especially those, nobody is perfect. Nobody is just having that type of relationship in real life, but a lot of people don't understand that. So when they see it, they wonder why they don't have it, and then they think less of themselves.
Relationship goals.
Yeah, there's no such thing as relationship goals. That is a false sense of reality. Like, nobody is relationship goals. You got to do what's best for you. You got to do what works for you, and no relationship is perfect. Everybody has their ups and downs.
What are your thoughts on the hyper-masculinity?
I got a lot of thoughts on hyper-masculinity, but I'll sum it up. I think hyper-masculinity is one of the main causes of a lot of the stigmatization of mental illnesses. I think that hypermasculinity is what keeps a lot of Black men and even some Black women as well in it keeps them away from getting the treatment, because nobody want to be weak. Everybody want to exude strength at all times. And the problem with that is that we as human, we're more comprehensive than strength. We have a full range of emotions, and we have to be okay with expressing those full ranges of emotions. We don't just experience anger and dominance all the time. It's okay to feel weak at times, because you feel it. You can't deny it and think that it's just going to go away. And that's hypermasculinity.
Well, can you define, if some of the listeners don't understand, what your definition of the hypermasculinity is?
Well, hypermasculinity is just the idea that somebody needs to assert emotions that project strength. So hypermasculinity would, in a layman's terms or whatever, would be somebody that's always upset all the time, right? And they're upset because they don't really want to acknowledge their other emotions. Like anger is what they call a secondary emotion. Anger is that emotion that you show when you are afraid to show your true emotions. Like we replace anger with every emotion. Like if you embarrassed about something, you typically don't say you embarrassed, you get upset, right?
Right.
If you're sad about something, you typically don't say, hey man, I'm sad about that, you get upset, right?
So would the secondary emotion be like a cover story?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's something to cover up that vulnerable feeling.
Okay, there's the light bulb right there.
Yeah.
There it is. It was coming.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. A secondary emotion is just the emotion that you use to avoid being vulnerable. And anger is the easiest emotion to show. It doesn't take a lot of vulnerability to be angry. But it does take a lot of vulnerability to be embarrassed or to be ashamed or to be sad or even to be happy. It takes a lot of vulnerability to do those things. And that's what hypermasculinity is. It's a fear of vulnerability.
Wow, I love that definition.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to another section. And also, if anyone, I'm going to drop the link. If anyone wants to come on and respectfully ask Aaren a question, I'd love for you to come on. Let me just post that right now. And then we'll go into the next. Somebody else made a comment. We'll go into that as well. All right. I just dropped the link if anyone would love to come on. So here is Keita. Thank you so much for your comments. They're always so insightful, sis. She said, social media is influential regardless of what we tell ourselves. Thank you for saying relationships goals is babble. Relationships are work.
Mm-hmm. That's facts.
And she would know because she's been married, I want to say 25 years
to
her husband. As a matter of fact, everyone listening, you can go to their website. It's Blind Guy, his wife, and not their website, but their YouTube channel, Blind Guy. He's really a blind man, and his wife is Lakita, and their life. And I listen to them when I'm at work on my lunch break, and it's literally like a talk show. I think it's so cool. And again, so relatable. But Keita, thank you so much for your comment. All right. So Aaren, we're going to start kind of wrapping it up. What are some common diagnosable mental illnesses?
Everybody's heard of depression, which is called major depressive disorder. Mm-hmm. Then you have anxiety, which is generalized anxiety. That's the technical name for it. And you have what they call social anxiety, which is a strand of anxiety, which is basically a fear of judgment or criticism. Then you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a mental illness that you get after you experience some sort of traumatic situation. Maybe it might be a car accident. Maybe it might be witnessing murder. Maybe it might be somebody raping you or something along those lines. That's something traumatic happening to you. Then you have schizophrenia, which is, I don't want to be stereotypical, but usually when you see like homeless people and they be out talking to themselves and yelling, may have be dressed very odd. That's somebody that's usually schizophrenic. And then you have OCD, which is preoccupied, which is when somebody is preoccupied with an obsession, or a compulsion. Which a compulsion is basically what you do to mitigate the obsession that you may have. It's a lot of commonly diagnosed mental illnesses. Bipolar disorder, which is depression and another disorder, mania, and when they're joined together, it's called bipolar disorder because there's two disorders in one. And it's ADHD, which is a lack of concentration or hyperactivity.
Doesn't are those triggered? Not all of them, but I'm thinking the OCD, the ADHD. Is that triggered by anxiety?
It can be, but a lot of times OCD or ADHD or whatever disorder isn't necessarily always triggered by something. Like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times it's in your DNA. You know, you get that passed down generationally in a lot of cases, you know, and maybe somewhere along the lines it probably was triggered by something, but for you, 3, 4, 5, 10 generations later, it's really just something that got passed down to you and you got to deal with it.
So I'm glad you said that. I would definitely want your thoughts on this. I read this article where it says when people start to do the work, and really work on themselves, not just the surface, but doing some shadow work, some serious peeling back the layers, that it takes about 3 generations for it to manifest as a healthy mental matters. Does that sound? What are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean? Like, I want to be clear on what you're asking me.
So, okay, myself. I started therapy. I've done the work. I'm continuing. The work doesn't stop, right? And I have my child. So I have better communication skills. I have better, or I have higher emotional intelligence. All of that. So then my child learns it. Maybe a little sketchy, but they're getting it. And then their child can improve on my child, and so forth through the generations. Like it's almost diluting the trauma.
Yes, absolutely. You know, that's 100% correct. But you know, the good thing about doing the work is that we can end it right now. You don't have to wait 3 or 4 generations to dilute it. You can end it right now.
Yes,
so,
sir.
That's one of the beautiful things about getting the help that you need, because you can solve that problem right now. And yes, it will trickle down in generations, but it could also, we can end it right here and now if you do what you need to do.
I love that. Oh, I love that. I didn't understand this. The antisocial personality disorder and conduct disorder.
Yes. And those disorders are, have you ever heard of somebody who's a sociopath?
I have, but I never understood exactly.
Okay, well, basically what antisocial disorder and conduct disorder are, you know, to simplify it, is people who don't have a conscience. They don't feel any remorse about causing harm to people. And that is a very common thing in our community when it comes to, like, quote unquote gangsters and people that do harm to other people. A lot of those people are suffering from antisocial personality disorder. Now, not all of them. It's a lot of people that be out here in the streets doing stuff and they really do feel remorse about the things that they do. But somebody who actually has antisocial disorder, they are incapable of feeling regret or remorse about doing harm to other people. And it didn't necessarily always trickle down to the crime. Sometimes people just have antisocial disorder and they just do really messed up stuff to their family and their friends. It don't necessarily always have to be a criminal element to it, but 95% of criminal offenders have that diagnosis.
Ooh, what about men? And this isn't male bashing by any means, but what about men who have multiple children from different women without any regard and just continue to have? Don't you think that has to have?
It can be, but antisocial disorder and conduct disorder are more so along the lines of depriving people of their human rights. Like, everybody that does messed up things isn't necessarily attributing it isn't necessarily attributed to antisocial disorder. Antisocial disorder is more so on the lines of doing something that is depriving somebody of their God-given rights, like stealing from somebody, or manipulating somebody into doing something for them, or like stuff like that, where most people will be like, man, that was messed up that I did that. Whereas having a lot of kids, although it can be messed up, it's not necessarily along the same lines.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I think that's the end of the notes I had for the book. Everyone else, if you want to know more, again, you're going to have to purchase the book. So if you all didn't see the book, I'm going to show you what the cover looks like. Oh, here it is. Right there. Let me make that a little bigger. There we are. Yeah, and I like that cover too, by the way.
I appreciate that.
It was the afro for me.
Mm-hmm. I had to put a queen on there.
Yes.
What better hairstyle to put on there than an afro?
I love it, love it, love it. All right, before we wrap it up, anytime I do a podcast, I love to be solution based.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody, if you're feeling triggered in a great way to want to take the next step, and matter of fact, Aaren, what could someone do if they wanted to take the first step to getting their Black mental health matters in order?
I think the first step that they should do is to research some mental health therapists in their area, and just go and call them. You don't have to commit to going. Just go and call them and talk to them and see what it's about. And then when you go with an open mind. Understand that every therapist ain't going to be the therapist for you. You're going to have to shop around a little bit until you find the right one. Hopefully you don't, but you might. You might have to go through 2 or 3 therapists and find one that clicks with you, because this is kind of touching on what I was saying earlier. Just because somebody a Black therapist don't necessarily mean that they're going to click with you. You got to find the right Black therapist, and then the magic will start to happen. Don't just count yourself out. Don't just count therapy out just because it didn't work on that first try. Keep going, because trust me, it will work. You will find the right clinician. You just got to put in some leg work.
So what would you say? I heard what you just said, but what would you say if someone's so adamant? Because I've heard this a lot. I'm not going to therapy. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. Like I was saying, you got to shop around. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with boxing, right? But they say style makes fights. And what that means is that, it depends on the style of the fighter sitting across from you that determines the outcome of the match. And that's the same thing when it comes to therapy. It depends on that therapist's style. It depends on your expectations going into treatment. It depends on that person's experience. There's so many variables that determine whether or not therapy works. So you really have to do your due diligence to find a therapist that's going to give you what you're looking for. And a lot of times that just starts off with a conversation. You got to really put yourself through the fire in order to know what is and isn't going to work.
Right. I love how you ended the book. Literally the last page, you titled it, "Do What Works."
Yeah.
And you said when it comes to mental health, there are no magical solutions. What works for your friends or family may not work for you, and vice versa. Some people rave about therapy and others cringe at the thought of it. But some people find medications to be helpful. What are your thoughts on medications, by the way?
I think that they serve a purpose. I don't think that medications are the end all be all of mental health treatment. But I think a lot of times because of stigma, people are not willing to take medicines. And those medicines a lot of times are the difference between wellness and illness for a lot of people. And if a doctor, a trained professional is telling you that you need to take it, I would at least consider it. I'm not saying you just got to accept that as the gospel, but I would at least consider it, especially seeing if you having certain issues that medicine is made to address.
And medicine is not a long-term,
not all the time, no.
Sentence.
Exactly.
Okay. And the moral of the story is that you cannot base what works on anything but your own personal experience.
That's facts. That's the end all be all right there. You have to go off of what works for you, and what worked for me may not work for you. Therapy doesn't work for everybody, but it works for a lot of people, and you got to really just see, medicine doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some. You just got to see what works for you and do that. But if you don't even try, you won't know what's going to work.
Right. How about someone just downloaded your book?
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that.
See, that's what it's about. It's past that baton. That I literally have chills. Keita, you are going to enjoy the book. It is an easy read, and anybody who follows my social media knows I go to the pool a lot, and this has been my go-to so far for the summer. This in my journal, which I'm not going to open my journal on this. Hey, Celeste. Celeste is another therapist who I absolutely adore. Celeste, the therapist, she said, yes, it's like shopping for new shoes. Every style and type of shoe won't fit on the first try.
That's facts. That is facts.
Yeah. And when you put that shoe on, it may fit, but you got to break it in. So come on.
There you go. That was a perfect analogy right there. Sometimes it just takes a little time to get used to certain things.
Yeah. I got these busted up flip-flops right here I'm looking at. Now they've turned into my shoes when I used to play kickball. Sterilize them. Now they're my house shoes.
Yeah, once you break them in, you love them.
Falling apart. All right. Okay, I'm going to put up another banner, and then we really are going to close it off. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Graphic?
Yep.
All right. Things I stopped doing to gain peace in my life. And I picked this because I realized when I was going through therapy that I experienced a lot of this on the other side. Me being a reformed people pleaser and an extreme reactionary individual and a fixer-upper. So getting my mental matters together, I found that this was very solution-based, which is why I picked it. So I'm going to start with number one, the arguing with people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, arguing with people is never really a positive result when you do that. A lot of times you argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you, and then you wonder why you don't really have any solution. It's a lot of times arguments are really a useless social dynamic. So a lot of times that contributes to more problems than it does good. But for some reason, we feel like it's a necessary evil, and it really isn't in a lot of cases.
Also, anyone, when you're listening to this list that we're going, if anything resonates with you, you know me. Put up those light bulb emojis in the comment section and let us know. Give Aaren some love. And this is his graphic that I got off of his Instagram, so he can explain it better than I can. What about wasting energy on one-sided relationships?
Yeah, that's kind of like the going along the line with the people pleasing.
Yeah,
it's a waste of energy to deal with people who only want you to benefit them, and they're not really bringing much benefit to your life. It a lot of times will make you feel less of yourself. You will start to think about yourself as not worthy because your whole relationship with somebody is only in service to them. And that's never really a good thing.
I think it was one of your posts when you were talking about toxic relationships and
Mm,
a person is so into loving or that trauma love into their individual, their partner,
yeah,
and he's loving on himself, but who's loving on you?
yeah, yeah.
It's just gone. All right. This resonates with me. Over committing my time when I didn't have the energy. That's that
Hmm.
people pleasing right
Yeah,
there.
it sure is. It
Ugh.
sure is. Sometimes we just got to be comfortable with upsetting people. Sometimes doing what's best for you isn't always going to be a popular option amongst other people. And, it's hard to really let that thought sit well with you. But once you do, you start to feel better about yourself. You start to really you start to really respect yourself more. You start to respect your
Yeah.
time more, in your life more, and you just feel better because you start to stand up to people and respect yourself. You start to give yourself
Mm,
what you need rather than always pouring into other people.
that's right.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a word right there. That
Yeah.
sounds like holding firm boundaries.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Oh, all right. Few more. Let's see. How did it feel when you started putting your firm boundaries? What was that initial?
Um, it feels good, because a
Yeah.
lot of times, we have a mistaken belief that boundaries make us a bad person. Boundaries mean that we don't care about somebody. But when you don't have boundaries, you essentially are not caring for yourself. So you got to
Right.
care for yourself just as much as you would care for anybody else, if not more, because if you don't do, who's going to do it? You know what I mean? So to me, it felt great to be able to show myself some love and appreciation. And that's all
Mm,
boundaries is showing yourself respect.
that's ooh, better say it. Oh my God. Now this is anyone who knows me knows allowing dysfunctional family members to steal my goddamn joy.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that speaks for itself. A lot of times it be family members that steal your joy, and you have such a loyalty to these people that you never really put them in a place because you feel like doing so is disloyalty and they make you feel that way. But you can't let them
Yes.
steal your joy just because they're your family members. Because if they trying to steal your joy, then they don't care about your joy, and you gotta care about it if anybody gonna care about
You better preach, Aaren Snyder.
it.
You better say it. All right. Let's wrap it up with pretending to be happy when I'm hurting.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one right there. And I think a lot of people do that, and I think it comes down to just having this distorted belief of having to have it all together. Everybody,
Yeah.
people always think you gotta have everything in life together, but that's such a unrealistic expectation, and it holds a lot of people down. It's okay to not have it all together. You don't have to pretend that you have it all together because in doing so, you make yourself feel a lot worse. Nobody has it all together. Life is not meant to be all together. There's ups and there's downs, there's peaks and there's valleys. And when you understand that, you give yourself permission to feel your emotions as they come, rather than thinking
Right.
you just got to be strong at all times.
That strong black woman.
And it's not possible, to be that all the time.
No. And the perfectionism that comes with it. That's
Yeah,
a lot of pressure.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. A lot of pressure, unnecessary amounts.
Exactly. All right. So, what I've taken away from you is to uh, have an open mind when it comes to your black mental health matters.
Hmm.
Yeah, have an open mind, show grace, and when
Yes,
you do the work, you can recognize it sometimes in people. You can become a lot more responsive and not reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that some of this could be potentially genetics,
Mm-hmm.
and that we do not have to wait for generations to fix it. We can fix it yesterday.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Aaren, any parting words you like to leave the good people, the listeners?
Yeah. I just want to leave everybody with do what is necessary to resolve your mental or emotional issues. Nobody can do it for you, and things certainly aren't going to just come together without any effort. Like, mental wellness is something that comes from constant effort every day over time. If you can't do it all in one day, just do a little bit in one day. Lay one brick, and over time, those bricks that you lay each day will build up into a wall, and that wall will be your emotional and mental wellness. So just do what you can do over time. Don't think that you got to do it all in one day. Don't think you got to recover in one day. Just do something and do it as soon as possible, because your mental health is the foundation of a great life. And if you don't get that in order, then nothing will ever really be in order.
That is so true. One last question. How did you feel when you had your first sale of the book? What did that feel like?
I felt gratified. Like, I was surprised for real. Like, I didn't expect so many people to, respond well and buy the book. You know what I'm saying? I just thought, little old me, this book ain't gonna really do too much. And then, I really didn't even think about that when I was writing the book, but it felt really good to know that people was out here wanting to read it, something that I put a lot of time and effort into.
Yeah. We appreciate you for real. It's so needed. Oh my God. You're amazing. I knew this was going to be good. I'll admit this. I was selfish with this podcast, because I remember thinking, I'm going to ask him. I don't care what anybody, how they feel about this. Is one of my favorite people I like to follow on Instagram. So this was more for me.
Anytime you want me to come, I'll come.
Oh, I would feel honored. All I have to do is go through your Instagram and we can talk about some of these amazing posts you put. You know I'm gonna hold you to that now.
Oh yeah, I know it. I mean it. Trust me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My selfishness paid off. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. I appreciate everyone's support. And as you know, it was the 1-year anniversary. I can't believe I've done it. But I'm going to keep pushing forward, and make sure and visit my website, Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. Download the audio podcast, leave a review, and more importantly, visit Aaron's his link that I put in the description box and buy the book. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.
For the queen, sisters manifesting their dreams. Get your cream by any means and beam with self-esteem. Beauty supreme and Buddha walk so mean. The way you fit in them jeans, you eat your cornbread and greens. Dance or a doctor, red wine or vodka. Redesign your spot and redefine your mantra. Retwist your locks and realign your chakras. Doing your squats and getting closer to God, huh? Brunching with your squad or taking a girl's trip. Adjust your crown, you God's gift to the world, sis. Celestial body, drink your water. Meditate, sun-kissed goddess, heavenly order. Levitate, tribe of Ashanti, black girl magic, melanin popping, whether you ratchet or lavish, whether you bougie or savage, you a gift and a treasure. You got to love a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, dog.